Today we're going to learn how to tell the date in Spanish. In English, the format for telling a date is usually your month, then your day, and then your year. So today being the 13th of February, we're going to say February 13th, 2013, or the shorthand being 2-13-13. Now in Spanish, all they do is they switch the day and the month. So the day comes first, then the month, then the year. For example, 13 February 2013, or the shorthand form, the 13th first for the day, then the month, and then the year. Now, in order to be able to say this grammatically correct, as in saying today is the 13th of February, we're going to need a couple of vocab words. All right, the first one being today is, which is hoy es. Then we're also going to need to know the word the, which is el. And we're going to need the word of, which is day. Alright, so in English we're going to be saying today is the 13th of February. Alright, and we're going to put another of in here, of 2013. Alright, now for Spanish we're going to go hoy es el 13 de febrero de 2013. Now, one common thing that we see as errors when we're talking about the date in Spanish is when it comes down to the year. For example, if we were to go back to, let's say, 1995. In English, we just say 19 and 95. We group the numbers together. So if I was to write that out, we group these two together and we group these two together. However, in Spanish, that doesn't work like that. They say each number individually. So 1995 should be written out as 1995. Now, one thing we didn't have to worry about in our date is because 2013, the second number is not there. It's a 0, so we don't have to worry about throwing in that extra number. But once we hit 2100, then let's say 105, then that would come into issue. But for right now, because it's still a 0 here, you don't have to worry about adding the 0. So you can just have the 2013. Now let's say you wanted to be a little bit more fancy and you wanted to include the days of the week with this. Right, so instead of just saying hoy es el 13 de febrero de 2013, you want to say today is Wednesday, the 13th of February of 2013. All we're going to do is you're going to add the day of the week before you add this number here. All right, so we know Wednesday as el miércoles, so we're just going to throw that in right here. Make sure we add our accent mark there. Miércoles. So it goes before the actual number is written. So hoy es el miércoles, el 13 de febrero, 2013. Now, the other aspect we have to cover is what if today, the date we're talking about, is not today? Alright? So what we have to do then is the simple thing of taking off the hoy es. For example, if we want to talk about Christmas in 2013, we all know that Christmas is the 25th of December. So we would just take off the hoy es and we would just say el 25 de diciembre de 2013. And that is if you were writing out the date for Christmas. Alright, now you would still go about writing it the same way we did before in like the shorthand, the day of the month, the month, and then the year. And next we're going to be talking about how to tell time in Spanish. Today we're going to learn how to tell time in Spanish. Now, different people, different teachers, different textbooks have different ways of explaining how to do this. I'm going to describe to you the way that I find the most common in my own personal experience and in terms of finding information out on the forums, etc. Right? So first thing we're going to do is talk about times that deal with everything other than 1 o'clock. Okay, this is not including 1 o'clock. So this is everything between 2 and 12. All right. So the first question we ask ourselves is ¿Qué hora es? That's like the signature question for this set. And that means, what time is it? So the thing with telling time in Spanish has everything to do with the minutes. All right. So first thing whenever you see a time, look at the minutes and decide if the time is between 0 to 30 or 31 to 60. After you figure that out, then you're able to see which model that I give you is the one you're going to need to use. So when the time is 0 to 30, your model is going to be son las blank y blank. In the first blank, you're just going to put the hour. And the second blank, you're just going to put the minute. So, for example, let's say our time was 2:15. All right. Son las, we put our hour, which is 2, which is dos, and then 15, quince. So, son las 2:15. All there is to it. Now, when we get to the 31 to 60, that becomes a little bit more complicated because they don't just say it the same way. For example, 2:45, they don't say it like that like we would do in English. They say it's however many minutes till the next hour. And so here's your model for this one. All right. So I'm going to give you an example for this. Let's say the time is 2:50. All right. So remember, this is going to be like saying it's however many minutes until and then that next hour. So there's 50 minutes. So we see here 31 to 60. There's 10 minutes until 3. So 10 is going to go here. And then next hour, which is 3 or tres. So faltan 10 minutos para las 3. Okay. Now, thing to look at, if you noticed, we didn't use any of the numbers that were actually from the time. So when you're doing this and you go back and you say, I'm using a number that was actually in the time given to me with a minute that's 31 to 60, there's a mistake and you need to go back and look and see where you misput the information. All right. Next question we deal with is not what time is it as in right now, but at what time something is, like in the future. And then you would put something after the is, like for example, ¿A qué hora es la fiesta? What time is the party? Things like that. So, dealing with our time, we have 0 to 30. The only thing we're going to do different than what we had before is change the son to an a. So we have a las. Alright? Now, same philosophy, you just change the hour and the minute. So once again, if we had 2:15, a las 2:15. Nothing really changed except for the son to the a. In terms of the time 31 to 60, change the faltan to a las. Once again, if we're using 250, you plug the same numbers back in you did before. So, a las 10 minutos para las 3. If you were using the same time at a different time about something in the future. So, at what time? ¿A qué hora es la fiesta? A las 10 minutos para las 3 at 2:50. All right, now we're going to move on from dealing with times between 2 and 12 to dealing with the 1 o'clock time frame. Now, we still have our original question, what time is it? And it's still going to be a little bit different for the time it is right now and the time in the future. So let's go ahead and write our question out. Alright, and time is 0 to 30. Alright, the thing to remember about 1 o'clock is always go singular and feminine. So when we write this out, we see up here we had son, which is technically a plural form of the verb ser. So we need to make it in the singular form, which would be es. See las, that's a plural form. Let's make it singular. We have es la. Now here comes the feminine part, because we know la is feminine. Uno ends with an O, so technically that comes under a masculine rule. So we got to change the O to an A. Alright, so we're writing this out. It'll always be es la una y however many minutes. So let's say it's 1:10. Okay, es la una y 10. You just plug in the 10 where the minutes go. Very easy. Now let's move on to the 31 to 60. Alright, we're still going to use Fulton because we're not going to be talking about the hour first, we're talking about the minutes. So if we were saying it was 12:50, Fulton minutos para la una. And so it's 10 minutes till 1. So there it goes next to your minutes. And then para la una. We changed the las to la to keep it singular, and we plugged in the feminine one, una, and that's how we got that. Now, the thing to remember is you're only going to be using the 0 to 30 with 1 o'clock to 1:30. Alright, and the 31 to 60 part from 12:31 to 12:59. Alright, don't get confused, because technically if you go past the 1:30 mark, you get into 1:50. That's still dealing with 2 o'clock because you're counting down from 2, and that changes from the 1. Alright, so pretty much this part only works between the hours of 12:31 to 1:30. If it's not in that time frame, it's going to be using one of these two up here. Alright, so let's go to the at what time and see how that changes a little bit. So once again, we just got to change this first one to a, la, una, and then the minutes. Alright, 31 to 60. A las blank minutos para la una. Notice I kept las here because once again, remember, we're not talking about the hour yet. We're still talking about minutes, which minutes are plural, so you got to keep that plural. The only part that goes to the singular is when it's right next to the word one, which we had to make feminine, so it becomes una. Alright. Now, there's a couple time-specific terms that we're going to get into a little bit now, in case you don't have them on your vocab sheet, in case you hear them. De la mañana, in the morning. Think of this as saying a.m. Alright, so that's anywhere between midnight to noon. Alright. De la tarde, in the afternoon. Alright, it is dealing with PM. However, they split the PM up between afternoon and night. So this is going to be everything between noon to 6 p.m. Alright. Then we have de la noche, in the evening. This is the second part of the PM. And this is going to be 6 p.m. to midnight. Alright. So where do these go? It's a very good question. They just throw right after the end. So let's throw back up here till, let's say it's 11:50, about ready to almost hit that midnight time frame. So we're in the PM, 11:50 p.m. Alright, so we look over here and we see, okay, it's 50 is a 31 to 60, so we know we're going to be using a Fulton. It's only 10 minutes. So Fulton 10 minutos para las. Now it's 11:50, so we're not going to use the tres. We're going to go to 12 because 10 minutes until 12. So we replace that with dulce, and then you throw that on the end, the de la noche right on the end. And I'll do a little bit more examples here in a minute on the back. All right, corto. In case you would like to say 15 other than saying quince, it's just another way of saying it. So We had up here, if you remember from our 0 to 30 model, son las 2:15, you could say 2:15. Just another way of saying 15. Both are perfectly correct. All right, move down. Media, just another way of saying 30. So if you don't like saying 30, like for example, 2:30, you can say 2:30. Just kind of means the middle. All right. Mediodía. This is going to be noon. All right, this is kind of a shortcut way of saying, like for example, if you don't want to say son las 12 de la tarde, you can just say son las mediodía. And then medianoche becomes your midnight. Once again, just a shortcut way, instead of saying son las 12 de la mañana, you can say son las medianoche. Alright, so let me give you an example with using these right after the end, and then we can go from there. Alright, so first of all, we're going to just talk about using them on the end of it. Alright, so let's go with 3:30. Alright, so if you remember our notes we had, 0 to 30, we're going to use the son las method. So we're going to start with son las. Then remember our model, we had the two blanks. The hour goes in the first one, 3 being tres, 30 being 30. Or you could put the other method and put media. Now we want this to be PM. Alright, so that falls between the noon and the 6 p.m. mark. So we're just going to add the de la tarde. It just goes right on the end. Alright. Let's do another example here. Let's say it's 10:45 at night. Alright, so 0 to 30 or 31 to 60, we see it's 31 to 60, so we use the Fulton method. Fulton 15, one of our blanks, minutos para las 11, second blank filled, de la noche, because it's between the 6 p.m. and the midnight time frame. Alright, and let's use another one using the morning here, and let's using it at a certain time. So let's say we have work at 5 o'clock in the morning. Alright, so we have 5 a.m. So first of all, it's 0 to 30, so we're going to be using las, first blank, 5 y blank de la mañana. Now, because it's right on the dot, you can say a las 5 de la mañana. Some people do write a las 5:00. It's not necessary, and if you're anything like me, simple is always better. So I would say don't even use it. Alright, I know the model has the two blanks, but when you hit 0, you don't even need it. It's extra, it's kind of a waste. Just don't worry about it. So we have a las 5 de la mañana, and it makes your life a little bit easier. I talked earlier about how some people teach the different ways, how the textbooks have different ways of saying it. The way that you're going to see it in most textbooks is going to be the fact that they just tell you to always use the son las method, which probably makes it a little bit easier for you. But in terms of commonality, I find that it's not as common. And if you look at some forums, they say they don't use it. So let me show you what the textbook's going to do in case you have that. That way, if you need some extra help, you're getting it here. All right. So they tell you to always use the son las method, and you're only going to change one word from what we have. All right. So let's just say it's 3:20. All right. It's 3:20. So we already know that we're going to use son las 3:20. So instead of using Fulton when it's after, let's say it becomes 3:40 now. All right. Now, instead of saying faltan 20 minutos para las 4, they're going to tell you to say son las 4 menos 20. Alright? You're still using the same words, which kind of helps you out. You're still using almost the same format in the fact that you just change these two around. So your hour is first, your minute is second. Right, and this means 4 minus 20. So if you've been working with math, it really helps you out because we know and is technically a plus and menos is technically a minus sign. So if that helps you out in terms of your textbook, that's great. Things that we've also seen in terms of younger generation is that they are going to use son las 3:40. It's more common with the younger generation coming up, but you can use that technically speaking. But the most common and the best way to use that I've found so far in my experience is using the son las for 0 to 30 and the Fulton for 31 to 60. And that is how you're going to tell time in Spanish.